Hello my lovelies, Chef Kieron Hales out here at Zingerman's Coleman Farms, continuing our series talking about my top 10 favorite cookbooks. Got quite a collection out here. It's hard to pick the top 10. One of them makes the cut every time I talk about a great cookbook that somebody should get is this unsuspected book called Ratio. It's by Michael Ruhlman. And what's really great about this is understanding the freedom of not having enough of an ingredient. When we think about becoming chefs, sometimes people cook without recipes and they remember how to do it in a simple like visual guide. Sometimes we're using cups to measure. Hopefully eventually we get to the metric system. I was trained as a pastry chef, and a lot of when you're doing pastry or bread work, especially cured meats, you get into ratios, so a percentage of different things that you're going to be using for a recipe. This book really simply explains that. I think it's one of the best reads to justify going into the metric system. It's probably one of the best reads for somebody who's like, well, I've only got 26 grams of, let's say, baking powder for a really couple of sized cake sponges that you need to make, and you needed 30. It would tell you really simply how to turn those all into percentages and change the recipe so you could still make the cake even though you don't have quite enough for that recipe. I think a lot of chefs and cooks at home get a little trapped into that has to be exactly that number, rather than being able to think of it as a percentage of the whole cake, and you only need that, 2.3% of it needs to be this. He does a really great job in a really simple format of explaining that. I think one of the ones that clearly pokes its head out at me when we talk about ratio cooking, he has a whole chapter on the importance of a scale, which if you ever meet me and we do a cooking class together, really important. Absolutely love a digital scale. And then he gets into sausages, and I think that sausages is probably, other than bakery, it's probably one of those things where you hear like 70% meat and 30% fat, or you've got 25% fat and 85% meat. He'll also explain like the percentage of the total weight that then needs to be salt. That is how we think when we do curing or sausages out here. And so when we started making sausages for our brunches and then have them in our retail store, it's really going to the basis of what that is. It isn't necessarily a cookbook where you're going to get the most creative recipes, but it's going to give you a really great baseline that then you can add your notes and your flavors in. So my mother's pork and apple sausage is based on a recipe she gave me, but I went back to the Ratio cookbook for what is a bacon, a very heavily fat-based sausage, and be able to use that as the baseline and then add back in the ingredients my mother had for it. One that we actually use almost verbatim is the bratwurst recipe in here, and this is on page 139. Again, really nice and simple recipe. What's super interesting in here is that they will use cups and tablespoons and not always grams all the way through the recipe. What's important to understand is how much of the percentage of each thing we're going to be using. This is a definite pickup for any up-and-coming chef or home cook that wants to really take their baking, their meat curing, or any cooking to the next level. Really great cookbook, The Ratio. All right, let's get to the next one.